hurt our industry the most. And it's hurt our industry to the point to where they can't put things out on DVD anymore because DVD is becoming a standard of the past. And Blu-ray is still expensive, prohibitive. And there's not enough content to fill a Blu-ray. So they are like, well, and the way licensing tends to work, and this is the thing that most of us don't know. I kind of had to find out the hard way. I work in the video game industry, so I kind of figured it out when we started licensing Japanese games and doing stuff when I was working for Sega. Okay, so when Sega does, for instance, when we do like an old cartridge game and we make it a digital download for your PC or for your smartphone or something like that, we have to actually repurchase the license for the game from the studio. Then we have to actually relicense it. So if we're going to make it a downloadable version of the game, then we have to buy the license for that. If we want to make it a smartphone game, we have to buy the license for that too. It's a different distribution, it's a different model. So, for instance, if they're making it a digital downloadable file through, we're making an anime and we're saying it's downloadable through iTunes and through Android, they may be the same file, but they're packaged differently, and so there are different packages that pay for each one.
Have they done something in the industry yet where they could do an all-out purchase license under one bulk where it can cover smartphone, tablet, Android, whatever console, third party, and you would pay one big bulk price to have?
No, man, because it's really funny, and I found this out when I watched what happened with Evangelion, because Evangelion was crazy. Do you guys remember how we were getting Evangelion and all of a sudden it had that hiccup and it just kind of the DVD stopped coming and there was a big holdup on everything? Well, this is what happens when you have to basically take a penny and split it 51 ways. Everybody wants more than everybody else, and so they had to go back and renegotiate the license contract because the music license was separate from the animation, from the manga, and from all the image rights and all the other stuff. Everybody had their piece, and what they found out originally was that the company that sold the original rights to ADV when they bought the rights had no right to sell those rights. So it wasn't until they got halfway through all their post-production and everything that everybody else goes, hey, why are you guys putting this out over here? We aren't getting paid. And they had to hold the boat and go back and renegotiate everything, and all the prices changed because they had to accommodate everyone. And then and now a lot of these licenses, because the companies have changed ownership, those licenses are now back on the market, which means the company can't just go pick up the catalog of an old company and just keep going. They actually have to go back and renegotiate the license because it's a different entity now. It's crazy. That's why a lot of shows that we would love to get, we can't get anymore. Either because the license is renegotiated and now they know what its value is because they saw how it performed before, so they want more money, or the studio that created it got bought by somebody else or it dissolved and nobody knows who owns what anymore. So there are just pieces of animation that we all love, that I would love to see come out again, we'll never see. Because the studio's either gone, the entity that owns it is either gone and out of business, and nobody can find anybody that actually can do anything. Let alone if somebody dies and their estate goes out, because that blows everything out of the water. It's really crazy.
What you just mentioned actually reminds me of one of my favorite fighting video games. It came out in 1995. It was some of the most cutting-edge technology at the time. It was created to kind of compete with Mortal Kombat because it was the only game at the time that had blood and gore, and it was Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct.
And then shortly after, they released Killer Instinct 2 a year later. And now, when the team known as Rare, all the motion capture artists, especially the motion capture artists that did Orchid and everyone else, the music, because they made all their music in-house, was eventually bought out. That entire team Rare was bought out by Microsoft.
Yes.
But the licensing of the game was Nintendo, because Killer Instinct only made it to Super Nintendo and Part 2 to N64.
Yeah.
Now, when Xbox or Microsoft acquired all the licensing from all the Rare games, for some reason, that is the one game, the arcade version, that has never made it to Xbox Live, both KI1 and KI2, and to this day they're still rumoring to make a Killer Instinct 3, the only game that can really compete against Mortal Kombat in that genre. And so when you was talking about what you're talking about, no one can find the people, or the team has disbanded, or they're not around. The same thing is with the team of Rare that created Killer Instinct.
Right, because, like, for instance, if the person who created Killer Instinct actually maintained all the rights to the actual Killer Instinct franchise, then Rare can't do anything about it, because they don't own it. They only own the software license for that game itself, and then they still have to get permission from the person who actually owns it, and that person has to get paid, because that person's going to hold up and be like, well, if y'all going to do something, I'm getting paid. Period. End of story. And I start here. And sometimes that's a hard negotiation.
Right.
Like, for instance, how many people here play Fantasy Star? Okay. Fantasy Star Portable 2. Okay, there's an interesting story for that one. So, up until March of this year, I was the customer service manager for Sega of America, and it was a really cool job. I did a lot of different production stuff. I did a lot of different stuff, but it was December, we started getting emails from customers because they had bought Fantasy Star Portable 2 for the PSP, either as a downloadable or not, and they couldn't get their licenses to authenticate because it was no longer available on PlayStation Network. And I'm like, that can't be. So I go on PlayStation Network and I check, and it's not there. You could buy it as a download, you couldn't buy it anymore. And I'm like, wait, this game is brand new. We just put this game out. And all of a sudden it's not there anymore, along with a bunch of our other games that we put up. They're not available anymore. And I'm like, looking at our sales numbers, and the sales numbers are great. The games are not that expensive. There are a lot of the older PlayStation games that we converted to PlayStation Portable, or there are a lot of our old Genesis games that we converted. They're great games, and they're selling. And all of a sudden, we don't have them anymore. So I had to go to our digital licensing team and go, hey guys, what's going on? And they said, oh, well, we were having a license renegotiation issue, and we had to pull all the titles because we had to renegotiate all the licenses, and the core owners wanted way too much money. And so we had to stop selling immediately. So all those games got pulled down. And there's nothing that we can do about it. So, and the thing for PlayStation Portable, for Fantasy Star Portable 2, was the licensing wasn't actually for the game itself. There was the opening theme for the game was done by a separate entity, and they wanted more money because we had taken the UMD version and converted it. But when we converted it, according to Japanese law, licensing-wise, it becomes a separate entity, and that's not something that we have the license right to do. So we had to actually pay for it, negotiate it again. So basically, they were getting paid twice for the same product in our eyes, but they were basically getting paid twice. And so it basically doubled the licensing cost for one song. There was one song, and we couldn't go into the software and remove it. Wow. So the only thing that we could do, since we didn't want to pay the extra money, was pull the game.
There was another game that was like that. When PlayStation 1 first came out, does anybody here remember a fighting game, very undercredited? It was called Evil Zone.
Evil Zone. I remember that one, babe.
The The boss was a female named Iha Durga.
Yes.
And it was anime-like with fighting, 3D. It was great. And the opening, the original Japanese name of the game is called Edits Vaju. And the opening theme was sung by Masami Okui, known as Kiss in the Dark, which became the tagline to when you can unlock the boss.
Right.
She says that I want to kiss in the dark, or part of her anime tagline. Well, that song never made it as, and I'm assuming it's because of the same concept, because I guess Masami wanted a lot of money for it.
There's running in the hallway. There should be no running in the hallway, please.